you some built-in features to Preview. Now, Preview is an application installed on every Mac computer, and it's designed to open PDF files. Now, most people use it to open up and read PDF files, but there is a number of editing features built into the program which are pretty cool, which can help you with a number of different tasks. So the first thing I'm going to show you is this tool right here. Now, this is your highlighter. If I click on it here, you can see the different colors and options I have. So I could go with yellow, for example, and then I could highlight a piece of text like that. If I want to unhighlight it, I can just drag my cursor the opposite way, right? So if it's an ups. The colors you can use independently. So I could highlight that entire section, for example, or I could highlight just certain words, different colors. And then when you click on the tool again, you turn the highlighter on or off. All right, so that's the highlighter. This is my markup toolbar. By default, it's usually off, but if I click it, all these other tools show up. So I'm going to go through most of these tools and show you how they work and what they do. So the first tool here with the two A's and the funny looking selection tool is my text selection. So with that, what I can do is highlight certain types of text in documents. I could then copy it, right? And then if I was to open like this text document here, I can paste in that text. So that's handy if you're working with a PDF and you're trying to borrow certain types of language from it. All right. The next tool over is my my marquee tool. What I can do with that is instead of highlighting text, I can highlight a section. Like I could do that, or let's say I want to do this whole section here. And then I could copy that and paste it in. The difference is that pastes it as an image, all right? So the first tool here will let you select text. This lets you select, an image or text that you then paste in as a picture, all right? Let's jump for a second over here to my shapes tools. So if I click, you can see I have a number of different shapes I can select from. So for example, I could pick this arrow. When I select these tools, a lot of them have these blue dots. The blue dots lets me rotate or move my objects. In this case, if I wanted my arrow pointed the other way, I could just drag the tail or the head of it, resize it like that. For my shapes, I could take them and do something like that. Again, resize it. Now for all these shapes, I want to point out these options over here, all right? Those edit my different shapes. So in the case of this arrow, I could decide that I want to have it be a thinner arrow. Maybe I want it to be a different color. For my oval here, I could do the same thing. I could pick a different width for my outline. I could pick a different color. And I could also pick a different internal color for my shape. One option you have in here is the square with a line through it. That makes it so it's transparent. So then I could do something like circle this last column of information. All right. The other thing I'm going to point out for these shapes is that a lot of them, besides these blue handles, also will have a set of green handles. So for example, like for this this line, the arrow here, I have one in the middle that lets me do something like curve my arrow, which is handy if I'm trying to like maybe have this text go directly to this text, right? And maybe I even have an object here that's kind of in the way that I don't want to be in the way. Depending on the shape, some of them have more complex features for those different green dots. So in this case, for the star I could make it more narrow or fatter. If I grab on this inside dot, my outside one, I can change kind of the overall shape of my arrows and points for my star. All right, so different effects depending on the shape. So having looked at my shapes, let me jump back one to my sketch tool. All right, so my sketch lets me do things like I could do a shape like that. Now you notice when I draw, this other toolbar here jumps over. That lets me decide whether I'm having the shape try to be pre-identified by preview in terms of what it thinks it's trying to draw. So in this case, it's kind of like this word bubble-ish thing. Or if I really wanted something that was a total free scribble like that. So if I wanted the scribble in that case, I could pick it there. If I was trying to do something like that and I really wanted an oval, I could keep it on the oval instead of the scribble. All right, so that's just kind of a cool tool that you can use. I'm going to jump next to this tool here. This is my text tool, so you can see it drop this text box. I'll drag it down here just to give myself a little more room. Oops, added an extra scribble. I can just click on that once and hit delete. So that's good to point out too. Any of these objects on my screen, I can click on once and hit delete if I don't want them. So here's my text, which again I got using this text box. For my text, I can highlight it, and then I have access to the text style over here. If I click on the down arrow next to that slanted A, it's your typical text toolbar like you'd find in a word processing document. I can do things like pick my font. I could change the size, larger or smaller, including going in there and manually typing in the size. I could change the color. So there'd be that text. When I add a new text box, by default, it takes the same size, font, so on and so forth. But I can go in there and change it to a different size, different font, different layout, different color. So the text boxes are independent of one another. Okay. So we've gone through the text tool, the shape tool, the sketch tool, my two different selection tools, one that lets me select text, which I could then paste and edit into a document, one that selects things that are pasted more in as an image. So the next tool I'm going to show you is my note tool. So when I click here, it gives me an option to give me the sticky note where I can type in wherever I need to. All right. So when I unclick from it, it adds this sticky note here. I can drag it and move it someplace else, right? I can click on it again and add more info as needed and click off from it. And it basically just gives me these little dots, right? These little sticky notes that I can drop wherever for whatever purpose and kind of position around my paper. Now, if needed to, if I select it once, which is sometimes a little hard, but if I select it, I can hit my delete key and get rid of those sticky notes. All right, so those are my notes. The last tool I want to show you is the signature or sign. So let's say that this is some kind of official permission form, or maybe it's a letter that you wrote, right? And you want an official signature on it. So if I click here, for me, I have these couple signatures already in. So I could select this one, and it's an image file, right, of my very messy, scribbly John Hancock. Now, the question is, how did I get it in there? If I click this arrow here, I can click on Create Signature, and I have a couple options. This first one is Trackpad. So if you wanted to, you could click on click here to begin, and then with your trackpad, you could scribble out or do your signature. Now, you'd have to be a little bit better than me. I can barely walk and chew gum at the same time. So using my trackpad to make a signature, even a bad one like this, wasn't a good option for me. So what you can do instead, if you go to create signature, is there's this option called camera. What you can do with the camera is you can take a blank piece of paper and take a writing utensil. Pen works a little bit better just because it's, um, it just shows up a little bit better if you write in pen instead of pencil. Write your signature on that paper. If you click on camera, what it does is it then pulls up your camera. And if you hold your piece of paper up with your signature, it'll take a picture of that signature and then add it to your list of signatures. And as you can see, you can do multiple signatures. So you could have a student, if parents were using this at home, they could have their signature and their student's signature. Um, Obviously, for teachers, they could have their own signature. Like I said, if they're signing, letters and they want to drop it in there. Just a really cool, really neat addition to Preview. I have to say, I use it all the time for documents. So that's the majority of kind of the extra features in Preview. I encourage you to check out some of the other options. There is things where you can, for example, like take pages and flip them sideways for this document. That isn't really pertinent. There's some things where you can resize it. There's options where you can share the document, which is handy if you have a physical classroom full of kids. But I think the main things is the highlighter and these extra markup tools that you can use with your documents.